The Horrible Hebrew History versus the Epic Egyptian Events. Part 2. Egypt. From the pharaoh who fought the hippopotamus to the one who lost Egypt to Persia. The history of the Egyptian civilization starts with an almost mythical ruler, Menes, founder of the first dynasty. The year is 12,000 BC, or is it 1692 BC? No, wait, I think it may be 9175 BC, and probably closer to 3892 BC. God only knows when. Menes rises to power in Upper Egypt. He brings under one rule several local states. The king lays the foundations of a splendid city. Memphis becomes the capital of Egypt. The Temple of Ptah is erected. Artificial lakes are constructed. A dike stops the flooding. Laws are revised. The administration is perfected. Menes loses a battle with a hippopotamus, so he takes his place as an Egyptian god. Atete, a physician, comes to power. He builds the citadel and palace of Memphis. Ouenephes rules during the first recorded famine in Egyptian history. He uses the spare energy of the survivors to build the first pyramid in Egypt. A few kings later, a great plague strikes. This gives testimony of a densely populated kingdom. The rule of Bhutan marks the beginning of the second dynasty, just 24 more to go. An earthquake swallows up many people in Lower Egypt. Bhutan's successor, Kakan, must have been bored out of his mind. He introduced the worship of various farm animals. Binader introduces a law that allows women to rule over Egypt. Nebka starts the third dynasty. The Libyans rebel. A lunar eclipse scares them into submission. The fourth dynasty begins with Khufu. The construction of the pyramids of Giza starts. It's the 25th century BC. Climate change and human ingenuity increase the food supply. Khufu notices that his people have too much leisure time during the months of flooding. Hundreds of thousands are gainfully employed in making giant boxes for royal corpses. 90 million cubic feet of masonry. Countless lives, all wasted as a testament to the vanity of one man. Khufu's brother and successor Khafra continues this glorious tradition. He adds a sphinx to his pyramid. By the end of the fourth dynasty, the vast resources of the mighty empire have been squandered. The kings of the fifth dynasty have to settle for truncated pyramids. It's up to kings like Pepi, sixth dynasty, to refill the treasury by looting Syria, Arabia, and Nubia. Fast forward to the 12th dynasty. Amenemha I improves irrigation with a system of canals, and administration with more efficient provincial governors. He continues the wasteful tradition of channeling his energy on monumental tombs and colossal statues. The 13 kings of the 13th dynasty ruled just 50 years. Egypt is exhausted. The 14th dynasty suffers tribal attacks from Arabia and Syria. The barbarian Hyksos capture Memphis, sack towns, pillage villages, enslave people, and destroy monuments. The fame of Egypt is extinguished for centuries during the 15th and 16th dynasties of the foreign shepherd kings. A rebellion breaks out in the province of Thebes. The Hyksos are forced to take their flocks and herds and go back to the deserts of Syria. The 18th dynasty starts with Ahmes in 1591 BC. He allies with Ethiopia by marrying their king's daughter. The horse and chariot is introduced to the Egyptian army. The military class dominates the priests. Palaces and obelisks are built again. Egypt defeats Phoenicia, Syria, and Assyria. The pharaoh wins the epic battle of Megiddo. He captures the impenetrable Nineveh. More looted treasure and slave labor is poured into new temples and statues to the glory of idols and pharaohs. Ramses starts the 19th dynasty. A descendant of the Hyksos, he has inherited their taste for bloodshed. He wins battles in Ethiopia and Syria and makes a treaty with the Hittites. His son, Seti I, marries a princess from the last dynasty and enslaves the Hebrew. It is Ramses II whose aggressive wars earn him the title Great. He subdues all rebellious neighbors. Ramses defeats Ethiopia, Syria, Arabia, and Scythia. The pharaoh builds the first Egyptian navy. He captures islands and seacoasts as far as India. The proud king feels obligated to follow tradition. He leaves behind a temple with 4 gigantic colossi of himself, unequaled in ancient art. Historians debate whether Moses brought the Hebrew out of Egypt during Ramses II or under his successor Meneptah. Ramses III terrorizes everyone: Hittites, Amorites, Libyans, and Nubians. 11 pharaohs rule under the name Ramses. Gradually, the power of priests and the influence of foreigners rises in Egypt. Pharaohs become interested in the conflicts between Judah and Israel. Egypt fractures. Provincial princes form an alliance with the priest king of Napata. Their political schemes help the Ethiopians take control of the country. Israel lures the pharaoh into conspiracy against Assyria. Egypt loses the war. Egyptian princes ally with Hezekiah, king of Judah, against the Assyrians. They lose the battle, then win the war in 698 BC. Soon after the Assyrian menace is gone, Egypt falls one more time under Ethiopian rule in 692 BC. In 672 BC, the Assyrian army invades Egypt and eventually drives the Ethiopians out. The Assyrians are weakened by Scythian threats. Psammetichus, an Egyptian prince, raises a revolt. Egypt gains independence. The 26th dynasty begins. Egypt rises from the ashes, but it's a different country. War, colonization, and commerce have brought Ethiopian, Greek, Phoenician, and Jewish cultural influences. An Egyptian fleet circumnavigates Africa 21 centuries before Vasco da Gama. Neku II is tempted by the decline of Assyria. He marches east, defeats Judah, and reaches the Euphrates. The rising Babylonia sends the crown prince Nebuchadnezzar against the Egyptians. The influence of the pharaohs in Mesopotamia is over. Babylon rules the world for a day. Egypt sinks to the rank of a vassal kingdom. Persia rises. Psammetichus III ascends as the last pharaoh. He is killed in 525 BC. Egypt becomes a Persian province. The once mighty empire is extinguished just 1 generation after Judah.